from the examination. This week's video is on Ind AS 115. Now, this video will give you a summary of the standard. Hope you find this useful. Enjoy the video. Before we begin with Ind AS 115, let us understand what is Ind AS. Ind AS is an abbreviation used for Indian Accounting Standard. Financial reporting is done by Indian companies using these standards. These standards were introduced in order to bring the Indian financial statements in level with the financial statements prepared globally, that is, using IFRS. Now let's begin with Ind AS 115. This standard is divided into four major parts, namely objective, scope, recognition and measurement, and presentation and disclosure. Alright, let's move ahead with the objective of the standard. The objective of the standard is to establish principles that an entity shall apply to report useful information to users of financial statement about nature, amount, timing and uncertainty of revenue and cash flows arising from a contract with customer. Contract is an agreement between two or more parties that creates enforceable rights and obligations. The core principle of the standard is that the entity shall recognize revenue to depict the transfer of promised goods or services to customer in an amount that reflects the consideration to which the entity expects to be entitled in exchange for those goods or services. Let's move on to the scope of the standard. This standard is applicable to a contract only if counterparty to a contract is a customer. A counterparty's final goal is to obtain output of the entity's ordinary activities. Now, counterparty will not be a customer if the counterparty participates with the entity in, say, building an asset. That is, it partakes in sharing the risk and rewards that result from the activity or process, rather than to obtain the output of the entity's ordinary activities. Moving on to the exclusions to Ind AS 115. Lease contracts, which comes under Ind AS 116. Insurance contract, which comes under Ind AS 104. Financial instruments and other contractual rights or obligations under Ind AS 109, that is on financial instruments, Ind AS 110, that is on consolidated financial statements, Ind AS 111, that is on joint arrangements, Ind AS 27, that is on separate financial statements, and Ind AS 28, that is on investment in associates and joint ventures. Also, non-monetary exchanges between entities in the same line of business to facilitate sales to customer or potential customers are excluded from this standard. Now, example for this would be, suppose two oil companies have agreed to exchange the oil to fulfill demand from their customers in a different specified locations on a timely basis. Now, this activity would be excluded from the standard. Now, let's move on to the next part of the standard, that is recognition and measurement criteria. This standard prescribes a 5-step process to recognize revenue. Step number 1 is identifying the contract with customer. The second step is identifying performance obligation. The third step is determining the transaction price. The fourth step is allocating transaction price to performance obligation. And the final step is satisfaction of performance obligations. Now, 3 of these steps, that is identifying contract with customers, identifying performance obligation, satisfaction of performance obligations. Now, these 3 come under the recognition criteria. The other 2, or rather the remaining 2, come under measurement criteria. Let's begin with the first step, that is identifying the contract with customers. The entity shall satisfy all the given criteria in order to account for a contract. These criteria are: parties to a contract have approved the contract, whether it may be written, oral, or as per any customary business practices. Then each party's rights regarding goods and services to be transferred are identified. The payment terms for the goods and services to be transferred are identified. The contract must have a commercial substance. It is probable that the entity will collect substantially all of the consideration to which it expects to be entitled. Now, all such criteria are to be met. If they are not met, then recognize the consideration as a liability until all the criteria are met, or recognize as revenue if there are no remaining performance obligation, and substantially all the consideration has been received and is non-refundable, or the contract is terminated and consideration is non-refundable. There are many things this standard talks about, such as combination of contract, contract modifications, and accounting for those modifications. Let's have a look at them. Combination of contracts. Now, two or more contracts can be combined into a single contract if it is negotiated as a package with single commercial objective, or amount of consideration of one contract depends on the price of performance of other contract, or goods and services promised are single performance obligations. Contract modification. Now, contract modification is a change in scope or price, or both, of a contract that is approved by the parties to the contract. Such modifications shall be accounted as a separate contract. If not, then it shall be accounted for in one of the following ways. One of the ways is basically you terminate the old contract and create a new contract. You can make adjustments to the original contract, or you can take a combination of both. So we now move on to the next step of revenue recognition, that is identifying performance obligation. Performance obligation should be identified at contract inception. They can be promised to transfer to the customer either a good or service or a bundle that is distinct, or a series of goods and services that are substantially the same and that have the same pattern of transfer to the customer. Now, what all items are considered under the promised goods or services? Now, this is an inclusive list. Now, by meaning what is inclusive, that you can add on things to this based on the nature of the contract. This is not a limited or an exclusive list. So these are the points: sale of manufactured goods, resale of goods purchased, right, resale of rights to goods or services purchased by an entity, performing tasks, providing goods and services as and when required, construction of assets to customers, use or access to the intellectual property rights of the entity, right to purchase the additional goods and services to the customer in the future. Now, once we are through with this list, we can go ahead and deal with the topic where how to determine whether a good or service or a bundle of that is distinct. Now, there are two criteria. First of which is customer can benefit from goods or services either on its own or together with resources that are readily available to the customer, and the promise to transfer the goods or services to the customer is separately identifiable from other promises in the contract. Now, these two conditions should meet in order to identify the good or services as distinct. Now, in order to identify whether the series of goods and services that are substantially the same and have been transferred in the same pattern to the customer, there are again two conditions. Those two are: the performance obligation should have been satisfied over a period of time, and the same method would be used to measure the entity's progress. So this is the criteria where you identify the same pattern. Now, what happens if the good or services is not distinct? Then what is to be done? Then entity shall combine the good or services with other promised goods or services until it identifies a bundle of goods or services that is distinct. Okay, so now moving to the third step of the revenue recognition process, which is determining the transaction price. The transaction price is basically the amount of consideration to which an entity expects to be entitled in exchange for transferring the promised goods or services to a customer, excluding amounts collected on behalf of the third parties. Say, for example, any taxes. The consideration promised in a contract with the customer may include fixed amounts, variable amounts, or both. When determining a transaction price, an entity shall consider the effects of all of the following: variable consideration, constraining estimates of variable consideration, significant financing component, non-cash consideration, and consideration payable to customer. Variable consideration. The variable consideration is either specifically stated in the contract, and if it is not so, then the promised consideration is variable if either the customer has a valid expectation from an entity's customary business practices, published policies, or any statement, and due to some facts or circumstances, it is reflected in the company's intention. An entity shall use either expected value method or most likely amount method in order to estimate the amount. Constraining estimates of variable consideration. Now in this, the entity at the time of estimating the value of variable consideration should take into consideration the estimates not only to the extent which are highly probable and it won't be reversed. In significant financing component, the effects of time value of money should be adjusted if the timing of payment agreed provides the customer or entity with a significant benefit of financing the transfer of goods or services to the customer. In case of non-cash consideration, non-cash consideration is to be measured at fair value. If reasonable estimation is not possible, an entity shall measure the consideration indirectly by referencing the standalone selling price of the goods and services promised to the customer in exchange for the consideration. In case of consideration payable to the customer, these are amounts payable to the customer such as credit coupons, vouchers, etc. Such consideration should be deducted from the transaction price. Now there is an assumption at the time of determining any transaction price. That this assumption goes by like this. The goods and services will be transferred to the customer as promised in accordance with the existing contract, and the said contract will not be cancelled, renewed, or modified. Now let's move on to the fourth step of revenue recognition, that is allocating transaction price to the performance obligation. The objective of the step is to allocate transaction price to each performance obligation or distinct goods or services in an amount that depicts the amount of consideration to which the entity expects to be entitled in exchange for transferring the promised goods or services to the customer. Allocation should be done on relative standalone selling price basis, except when allocating discounts and allocating variable consideration. Now, under these exceptions, an entity allocates a disproportionate amount of transaction price to specific performance obligations based on the evidence that it suggests the discount of variable consideration relates to those specific performance obligations. Now, let us understand standalone selling price basis. It is the price at which an entity would sell promised goods and services separately to a customer. Basically, it can be the observable price of a good and services when the entity sells the good or services separately in similar circumstances to similar customers. A contractually stated price or a list price for a good or service may be, but shall not be present to be the selling price of that good or service. Now, there are three methods to estimate the standalone selling price. First one is adjusted market assessment approach. So in this approach, basically the entity evaluates the market price or refers competitors price. In the second step, that is expected cost plus margin approach, forecast expected cost and add margin. That is, the entity can forecast the expected cost and add the margin. And in the third residual approach, they can simply deduct the sum of standard of selling price of other goods and services promised in the contract from the total transaction price. Now, this residual approach is to be used where selling price is highly variable or where the selling price is uncertain. Now, let us quickly discuss the concept of contract cost. Now, contract costs are either incremental costs incurred to obtain a contract or they are costs to fulfill the contract. So, under contract acquisition, these are incremental costs to obtain a contract that would not be incurred if the contract is not obtained. And we have to recognize such costs that are expected to be recovered as an asset. Now, under contract fulfillment, now under such costs are you should defer such costs to fulfill the contract, recognized as an asset under this standard if costs are directly related to the contract and generate or enhance resources and are expected to be. Now we are towards the last step of the revenue recognition, that is satisfaction of performance obligation. Now revenue shall be recognized as and when the entity satisfies its performance obligations by transferring a promised goods or services, that is an asset, to the customer. An asset is transferred when the customer obtains control of the asset. Now let us understand what is control. Now this control methodology or control model is totally different from the previous standard that we had, that was Ind AS 18. So that had a risk and reward model, and this is the control model. So if someone asks you what are the major differences, this could be the one. Uh, the control model has replaced the risk and reward model under Ind AS 18, under Ind AS 115. Sorry. So let's go on and let's understand what do you mean by control. The ability to direct the use of and obtain substantially all of the remaining benefits from the asset. It includes the ability to prevent other entities from directing the use of and obtaining the benefits from an asset. Now, in order to determine whether control has been transferred at a point in time or transferred over time, we should look at the following checkpoints. Control is said to be transferred over time if customer has the control over the asset as it is created or enhanced, customer receives and consumes the benefit as the entity performs. The asset transferred has an alternative use to the entity. The entity has the enforceable right to receive payment for work to date. If if these points are not satisfied, then it could be considered that the control is transferred at a point in time. So now moving on to the last part of the standard, presentation and disclosure. Under presentation, an entity shall present the contract in the balance sheet as either contract asset or contract liability. Any unconditional rights to consideration shall be separately presented as receivable in the balance sheet. Revenue to be recognized during the year should be reflected in the statement of profit and loss. Disclosures. An entity shall give disclosures regarding the qualitative and quantitative info about contracts with customer, significant judgments and changes in the judgment made in applying this standard to the contract, any assets recognized from the cost to obtain or fulfill a contract with customer. So friends, with this we end the summary video on Ind AS 115. Hope you found the video useful. Please like, comment and subscribe to our channel. So we come out with weekly content on various topics. Do let us know in our comments on what topic would you like to see a video, and we'll work on that. Hope you like the video and thanks for watching. Any suggestions, comments, anything, please drop a comment down and we'll revert to that. Thank you so much.